Almost all of us have been in situations where we have to make a presentation, give a talk, or there are situations where we have to present our ideas in front of a good number of people, sometimes people who are very, very senior to us in organizations. And all those situations, they can be very, very nerve-wracking. And then we have this fear that, oh, you know what if my nervousness shows there? And then we have the fear of not appearing confident, which further erodes our confidence. So now, what is the solution? When I was in second grade in school, every day before the school started, at the beginning, we used to have something called the school assembly. I'm not very sure if we have it these days, but at that time it was like a very standard thing. Every school would have that. And in the assembly, you would have prayers, and then you would have somebody presenting the news, somebody sharing a thought for the day, and so on. Now, in this particular school where I was, it was a very big school in Bangalore. Every class by rotation would have to perform these activities. So once by rotation, the term came of my class and my section. And from all the students, unfortunately, I got picked up to present what was called a thought for the day, which was just simply share like one line, some interesting thought, some quote or something which would trigger, hopefully, something in the brains of people who are listening. People did not pay much attention, but that was the routine we followed. And I was all of like 7 years. So you can imagine I was very, very scared. And this was a huge school, almost 1,000+ students. So then, since I was picked up, I had no choice. So I found some quote or something, and my parents, my father, like he made me repeat and practice, and it was sort of rehearsed thoroughly, and I was just like a robot ready to blurt it out. Despite that, when I landed in school that day, I came to school and I was feeling very, very scared. And I was standing on the stage on one side, my legs probably shivering, my knees knocking. But when my turn came, somehow I was able to walk up to the mic was lowered for me, and then whatever I was trained, I just blurted it out, and then I was still alive and I just went back. But here is the interesting thing. When I came back after having shared the thought for the day, I suddenly felt that my panic had gone down. Not just that, now, standing before the same 1,000 people, I was not feeling as scared. In fact, after that, maybe a week later, if I had been asked to do that activity again, I would have certainly shared or felt some nervousness, but not nearly as much as or even close to what I felt the first time. Now, most of you, even if you have not been through this experience, almost all of us have been in situations where we have to make a presentation, give a talk, or there are situations where we have to present our ideas in front of a good number of people, sometimes people who are very, very senior to us in organizations. And all those situations, they can be very, very nerve-wracking. So when we are facing that situation, here's what happens. We want to appear confident, but we are feeling nervous. So then we try to somehow hide or suppress the nervousness, and then we think we can force ourselves to appear confident, but it doesn't work. And then we have this fear that, oh, you know what if my nervousness shows there? And then we have the fear of not appearing confident, which further erodes our confidence. So now, what is the solution? Now, one thing which you might hear is people say, use or do affirmations. So before you go, tell yourself, I am strong, I am confident, I am this, I am that. And then if you repeat it, you will start feeling that way. Reality is, it doesn't work that way. Yes, maybe at that time when you're making those affirmations, maybe it makes you feel a little better. But as much as you want, you can say, I'm great, I'm confident. But when you get in front of the crowd, you don't feel that confident or that great anymore. It just melts away. So this is not the answer. So what is the approach? So I'm going to give you a very simple 3-step approach. The first one, which is pretty obvious one, so I won't spend time on it, is that if you're making a presentation or talking to somebody about something, you should have a solid knowledge of the topic. You should know it cold, but this is obvious, so I'll not spend time on this. Let's spend more time on the other two things I want to share. Second is, which is the most important one, is learn how to manage your emotions, including your fear or your anxiety. Now, in the beginning, I shared my experience, my story of having to share the thought for the day in second grade. What happened there? Here's what happened. I had that fear inside me. And that fear of speaking before people, it is something that many of us have from early childhood. So it's sort of, we come wired with that kind of fear. So our mind associates presentation before a big crowd with something that is dangerous. Why? Because if something goes wrong, those people may look down upon us, and humans are wired to want to look good in front of their peers, in front of their friends. Why? Because maybe Historically, as our brain evolved, we were part of tribal societies. And in tribal societies, if your standing before the tribe members went down, then that would affect your survival. Because if people did not like you or respect you, you will not get food, you will not get protection. So in those days, maybe like 100,000 years back, being liked or respected by your peers or by your tribe was critical to survival. So that thing has probably been wired in our genes. So even today, we want to be admired and liked by people. So now if we make a fool of ourselves and we think that people won't like us, we feel like it's a life and death matter. So our mind has this association, speaking in front of a crowd, fear of losing self-esteem or risk to our own existence. So there is a threat perception which our mind is attaching to speaking before people. Now, in the case in the example I shared, what happened? I made not a speech really, I just shared a thought for the day. And that one exposure, it told me something else. It said that, look, my mind sees that I made a speech before 1,000 people and nothing really happened. It was just fine. So now my mind has made a new association. It says, speaking before people, not dangerous. Earlier it was speaking before people, danger. All right. So I'm creating a new association. It's called an associative memory. So if I had the opportunity in that case, in my second grade, to make this presentation before the school, let's say 10, 15 times over a month, quite likely my fear would have gone down substantially. So this, in psychology, this is called exposure therapy. So if something is creating fear, if you expose yourself to the same thing which is creating fear and you realize that, look, nothing happens, it's actually fine, then your brain will now start creating these new memories, associating that source of danger, what you think is danger, to an experience which is actually not dangerous. So over time, you will lose that fear. This is used very commonly in treatment of phobias and so on. Just to give another example, let's say if you have fear of heights. If you go and stand on top of a tall building and stand there and look down, initially your knees will shake, you'll feel very uncomfortable. But if you stay there for 5-10 minutes until your fear goes down, and if you go and repeat this every day, do it every day for maybe a week, 2 weeks, you will find that your fear of heights will decline dramatically. That's how it works. One more thing, to manage your emotion or of fear, anxiety, etc. When you're in that moment, simple things like slow, deep breathing exercises also can really, really help. But the previous technique I shared, which is exposing yourself to the danger in a controlled manner, that is the single most important thing that you can do to overcome the fear. Now let's talk about the third factor. Okay, so I talked about knowledge, I talked about exposure to the danger. Third is I want to talk about practice. Now, before I tell you I share the learning, I just want to share one experience. So when I was preparing for my civil services exam, the last step was an interview. Now here's the deal. In the interview, you have to talk to a panel of people and you get about 20 to 30 minutes, maximum half an hour, I guess. And in that duration, in those 30 minutes, you have to make an impression. And depending on the kind of impression you make, the impact on your end result can be massive. So you can go from getting the service or the job that you really want to not getting any job at all. And think about it. Those 30 minutes could determine what career you're going to pursue for the next 35 years. So the stakes are as high as they could be. And naturally, everybody feels very, very nervous. I was also very nervous just with the prospect of having to go for the interview. But here is what I did. At that point, I was staying in hostels of IIT Kanpur and a couple of my friends, we were preparing together. So we would just sit and do mock interviews. We would do again and again and again repeatedly. And we did those mock interviews till a point where we had practiced all kinds of scenarios, all kinds of questions. And at some point, when I went for a mock interview, I sort of almost knew what to expect. In fact, any situation that was thrown at me, any question, any curveball, I knew how to handle it. Let me give you another more elegant, more interesting example. There is a documentary called Free Solo. If you haven't seen that, maybe just you can check it out. It is a story of this guy called Alex Honnold, who is one of the world's best rock climbers. And he climbed a rock formation called El Capitan, which is 3,000 feet, okay, 3,000 feet of vertical wall of concrete. Very, very dangerous, very difficult. Not that many people in the world can do it. But here's the most important thing. He did it single-handedly, all alone, without any rope, no harness, no safety, nothing, barehanded. One single fall would have killed him, guaranteed. And most people, almost, in fact, everybody would have taken a fall. It was impossible to just climb that without any rope or any safety harness. But here is what he did. He had practiced it so many times that when he finally did it without any rope or without any safety, Every single step, so every foothold, every toehold was so practiced in his mind that when he was doing it, it was almost like he was playing a tape in his head and he was just repeating the things that he had done earlier. Everything felt very, very familiar. When things are familiar, there is no fear. Familiarity takes away the fear. This is the secret. There is no secret really, but this is a three-step process. Knowledge, exposure, and practice plus familiarity. Do that, and you can face any crowd, any situation. Nothing can really shake your confidence.